Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm Will, and I'm joined by my co-host over here, the Grease. Say hello, Grease.
What's up, everybody? We have a very special episode.
Is that what you call these?
I was fumbling around. I was like, is this whiskey news? No, it's not really news. It's actually history. We're in whiskey history.
Yeah, this is something we don't do often. We don't do a ton of interviews, but every once in a while we meet someone that we just have to have other people here. Mm-hmm. And one of these people is Nelson Eddy. He is the historian at Jack Daniel's. We got to meet him when we did the media trip for the Jack Daniel's 14 year. That was so fantastic. And
something interesting too, he's been at Jack Daniel's for 38 years.
Yeah. Incredible guy, a wealth of knowledge. And just when we got to spend time with him during those days at that media event, it was one of those things where it's like, this is someone that our people will love to hear from. There's so much just fascinating things that come up through the course of conversation. Mm-hmm. Like you're just talking about whiskey or just friends and whatever, and little nuggets of wisdom and of knowledge and history come up. And so we knew that this would be someone that would be special to have on the show.
It took us a total of 2 seconds to ask the marketing team and men, can we get Nelson on the show?
Yep.
We had to. I don't really, I'm not a historian by any means. We're on the way to Jack Daniel's to taste Jack Daniel's 14 for the first time. And he spoke for an hour on a bus, and I was just so locked in.
Right.
I was like, he's not necessarily like, uber charismatic. He's not grabbing your attention because he didn't
have a PowerPoint is what you're saying.
Yeah, no, he grabbed our attention because he's so knowledgeable and just so approachable in the way he speaks about what he knows best, and it's Jack Daniel's. And I was like, we have to have him.
So not over Zoom, not over StreamYard, anything like that. Right here in the Nook, Nelson Eddy from Jack Daniel's. You're going to get some sort of jump cut or something because we're actually cutting this after we've talked with them.
And I mean, if I have enough time,
secret.
If I have enough time, I'll do like a little.
Yeah, I wanted to do like a snap and then do it, and I forgot to do it. Anyhow, here we go. We're talking with Nelson Eddy. He's going to join us. All right, and we are joined now by Nelson Eddy, and this is special because we don't do a ton of interviews. We only do interviews when we come across somebody that we just think has some amazing things to tell people.
And a beard.
And a beard. Typically, it includes a beard. But Nelson is the historian at Jack Daniel's, and we had a remarkable time with him on that media tour that we did. And Nelson, just thank you for coming and joining us. We call this the Nook. You are in the Nook.
It's a lot smaller in person, isn't it?
Well, I feel like I'm surrounded by greatness, all of this spiritual, inspiration here is great.
Yeah.
Well, we are going to indulge in some of that here in a minute, but just top line, I mean, Jack Daniel's historian, what does that mean to someone? I mean, I think it makes sense to hear that title, but people may not think about these historic brands having someone that actually keeps track of and looks into the history of the brand.
Yeah, when you have a history, you really need to have someone to keep track of it for you, and especially as rich and long and as varied and involved a history that Jack Daniel's has, from music to the movies to popular culture of all kinds, and then its growth around the world. Many places it's a symbol of America or American values, and so a lot of brands have great stories, but no history, and Jack Daniel's has both.
Yeah, there's some brands out there that are just begging for a story, and you're just like, I can't remember all of the stories.
That's right, and I don't remember them all, And there's new,
which is shocking because this man knows more about Jack than I do about everything.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, and I think honestly, one of the reasons that made us immediately think after that media tour that it would be incredible if you would come and join us for a show is that Grease isn't big on history and learning things. And when we saw on the itinerary,
No, that's not true. I don't like reading about history.
But when we saw on the itinerary that the Jack Daniel's historian would be joining us, I've never seen him so locked in for that bus ride from Nashville to Lynchburg, where you were just sharing things with us and just nuggets of lore and history that we'd never heard of before. And we've been doing this 9 years and have been looking into the brands and things for a long time, that it was truly fascinating. So that's one of the reasons we're so happy to have you on here. But one thing that really piqued my interest, and I want to go into a little bit before we get into some of the other things, is that we always think of Jack Daniel's as Tennessee whiskey, which it is. And we think of Lynchburg and all the storied history there. But I think in my head, the Jack Daniel's Nashville connection was more because of country music and all the songs that have included that brand in it, outlaw country and things of that nature. But you started to kind of peel back and just discuss the rich history of even Jack Daniel himself and the city of Nashville, and how really their histories are entwined together, that I don't think we would have the Nashville today that we have if it weren't for some of that legacy, and we wouldn't have the brand that we have if it weren't for those two being tied together.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Jack Daniel's and Nashville, the city, are in lockstep or tied from a historical point of view. I mean, Jack goes to Nashville. He'll go to Nashville to see Teddy Roosevelt. He'll see him at the Ryman Auditorium, which is still there today. One of the first stars of the Grand Ole Opry, Uncle Dave Macon, was a banjo picker, and he comes from around Woodbury, Tennessee. And before he becomes a banjo picker on the Grand Ole Opry, he has a mule train, and he drives his mule train from Woodbury to Lynchburg, delivering Jack Daniel's back to Woodbury in those early days. And he's also a bit of a street corner preacher. And he says, if I can't charm him with my preaching, I'll charm him with Jack Daniel's and my singing. Is sort of the thing that he did. And when he performed on the Ryman, he was known for having a little black satchel. And in that black satchel was always a bottle of Jack Daniel's. So, and there are countless stories that tie Nashville to Jack Daniel's. So it's more than the music. It's a commercial center. His very first distributor was in Nashville. And it goes way back.
Yeah, and it still has ties to Nashville. This is Eric Church, the old chief, did a bunch of single barrels essentially.
Yep.
And the rumor was that he used those on tour, or like he always had Jack Daniel's on tour, and it just seemed like a natural fit. Do you know anything?
Eric Church was one of those people. He was not somebody that we, when he got big, we interested him in a sponsorship deal. He genuinely liked Jack Daniel's, and that's the way we like to do things. We don't like to buy people's love. We'd rather have them speak from friendship than from a contract. And he was a great lover of the brand. And he would have single barrel on tour. I'm not sure this is entirely legal, but he would finish those bottles. He would sell the bottles.
I'm into it.
He would not sell the whiskey because that would be illegal, because he's not,
He didn't have but
he did
retail
hand it out, right?
Well, you can give things away.
Yeah.
That's how we got around it for years in Lynchburg. It's a dry county, and so we gave a lot of product away, or people in town would hide it in their cooking, in ice cream, and in apples at Miss Mary Bobo's. Mm-hmm. And that was the way we got around that, is you could give it away or people could eat it. It was just drinking it they couldn't do. But anyhow, back to Eric Church. He wouldn't finish. He would leave just a little bit in that bottle. And so when they were selling all these empty bottles, you'd see a little drip there.
Yeah.
And, you know, we'll leave it at that.
You weren't doing it, Nelson. It wasn't you selling it.
All right. I love y'all to death, but we need to be drinking while we're talking.
Okay.
And Nelson kindly brought us the latest batches of the 10-year, 12-year, and the 14-year. We had them, but he was like, drink my whiskey instead.
Yes.
So we will do that.
Start with that 10-year. And that's actually one of the great reasons to have you here, because you know, people see these products hitting the market, and it's you know, bringing forth a new product. But one thing that I think that Chris Fletcher is focused in on, and hearing his passion about it at our event, but why you're such an asset to this as well, is that this isn't just what new products can we make, what innovation, if you will, what do we have that we could produce that we haven't done before? It's actually the opposite. It's what can we produce that Jack Daniel's did produce before. And so just kind of talking about that and being able to taste these things that haven't been available for in some cases over 100 years, as someone who has this job of historian, I mean, what does that mean to you as someone in this position, seeing the commitment to the history even to this day with the new products being released?
I mean, this is an incredible product, or this series of 10, 12, and now 14. It's an incredible series. And you know, our master distiller, Chris Fletcher, is kind of the perfect guy to do it. His grandfather was master distiller during a time when we had tremendous growth. And the challenge at Jack Daniel's was to expand without changing how we made it, without cutting corners. And so he has his foot in the past, but he has his foot also in innovation. So while this harkens back to the past, there was some things that made this really, really challenging. These labels are the 10, the 12, 14-year expressions go back to before Prohibition, back in Jack and Lem's day, and they haven't been produced by Jack Daniel's since. Well, we've changed. We've gotten a lot better in how we construct our barrels. Mm-hmm. We know a lot more about warehousing. In Jack's day, he had one warehouse, and we know today it was in the worst performing place in the hollow. It was down in the hollow. It was near the distillery, so he could roll his barrels to the barrel house.
Efficiency, it makes sense why you wouldn't want it having to push that after coming off the still up on, Coy Hill or something.
Yeah, I'm big on logistics. That just sounds like a smart human.
Well, he was a smart human for sure, and we owe a lot to him. But we've learned, he said, we don't have a lot of Jack's words, but this we do have. He said, every day we make it, we'll make it the best we can. And that's like continuous improvement. Continue to make it the best you can. And so we now have warehouses or barrel houses up on the hill, get more exposure to the sun and wind. Mm-hmm. And, places like Coy Hill, known for the whiskey it's producing, we know so much more that to let whiskey go 10, 12, 14 years, in a barrel that doesn't perform like our barrels today, in warehouses or barrel houses that didn't perform like ours do today, it took some ingenuity. So it's perfect, I think, as it shows our ability to innovate. We're going to do something that was around a long time ago, but we're going to have to use some innovation and some thought in order to make the whiskey as great as it was in Jack's day.
Well, and you also have to think about, you talk about barrel technology and even just scientific measurement technology that we have now, being able to know what the climate's going to be like and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. The yield on a 14-year barrel, 18-year barrel, even 21-year-old barrel that Jack Daniel's was producing, I mean, there's no telling how low that barrel was, not having all of the ability to even take measurements or know we should probably move this at this point. I mean, even just being able to weigh it probably wasn't something that they were readily able to do, to pull a barrel down and figure out if it needed to be moved or rotated. Just the fact that his commitment in that day to that slogan, to that, that driving mission statement of making the best we can every day that we make it, that shows that commitment of saying we are going to make old whiskey, and it's going to take a long time, and we're not going to get a lot out of it.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to paint a picture, Nelson. We are headed.
He's not a very good artist, by the way. So this picture is going to be more like a finger painting than a real, a Monet or something.
Dude, I was good at art in middle school. I don't know what you're talking about, but I want to paint a picture. We're headed down to Jack Daniel's. I'm locked into what you're saying. It's incredible. We get there. We go up into a rickhouse, and Chris Fletcher starts talking about, the history of this age series that we're releasing. And then he goes, the 14-year or whatever, he was like, the whiskey in this barrel, outside of two of us or a couple of us, we're going to taste what Jack Daniel's made in over 100 years. And he goes, and we're going to do it right now. And it was straight out of a barrel. It wasn't, the batches or whatever. And the entire crew that was with us did not react. We were all just like, in Will's video footage, I'll have to maybe find it and show it or whatever. But like, I'm sitting there filming, and then I turn to Will and look at him like, did you just hear what he said? And what a moment, like, of him being able to say that, just even being able to say it. That is something unique that other master distillers didn't get to say.
It was truly a unique moment. I had not had a 14-year-old whiskey out of a barrel ever. And like you said, only a couple people had it in their preparation of it. And going back to what you said, the Angels get more than their fair share when it's up in a barrel house for 14 years.
Yeah, you said this was a spiritual location. I was like, well, these did fight off the Angels, so it might be on the wrong side of spirituality.
But it's not only that, but he's offering at a proof that's close to the proof you enjoyed it at. It's 126.3 proof, the 14-year-old is, and it may have been a few proof points higher. It's probably 130 or thereabouts.
He said it was very close.
Yeah. But when you offer it at that high proof, you're getting even less that you can offer.
Exactly. Well, something unique that he said that day was that it had a higher fill level than most of the 14 barrels. And so that was slated to be possibly aged up to the next series 18. Now he said,
if some should come about at some future
if
day.
some could come about, but he also was just like, if it gets older, we can put it in the 14 batches, age stated 14 just has to be the minimum. Right. And so I was like, holy cow, we just tasted a barrel that might end up being a barrel used for the 18 year. 21. Or 21. I mean, 27, 20. I don't know. It doesn't go that high. But I was just like, wow, like not only did we get to try a single barrel of 14 year, like we got to experience potentially a barrel that is going to age even longer. And I was just like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know.
Now, a warning here, Chris has made, and Jack Daniel's has made no commitment. If it gets to 18 years and the master distiller says, this isn't right, we'll stop.
Yeah.
But we're all
going
hoping.
back to Jack Daniel's slogan.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but historically, Jack made it to 18 years and then to 21 years. And that's the oldest label we've been able to find of his whiskey. And, 21 years, that's a career for most people.
Right.
What a cool, for 21-year-old Jack Daniel's, 21 years period on products. It's like that. What a cool gift to get somebody that turns 21. But like, this has been in a barrel your entire life. Now let's drink it. That's right. Like that would just be, the heck with birthday bourbons. You know what I mean? Like, let's do this one.
Yeah. That is pretty incredible.
And I've heard someone at some point was making a reference to, a master distiller when they start, they may only get to see like 3 generations of their whiskey come to market because of laying down the barrels and kind of things that that one embarking on a project like this is so ambitious, and it's trusting within the corporate structure that we have buy-in, right? I mean, the fact that there's a historian and even the commitment to, legacy and how many people that work for Jack Daniel's are legacy employees that have had family members. I think that in today's world, with how many gigantic brands we have, and even small family brands and things of that nature, that it takes a special type of global company. I mean, just the fact that Jack Daniel's can even pull this off just speaks to how remarkable and such an anomaly when it comes to a brand and a company, which is a part of a larger company, but that it can be able to do this. That's not an easy sell, I feel like, in today's world, because whiskey in general is not an efficient thing to put to market. But then to be able to say, we're committed to this because it's a commitment to our past, and get buy-in from every stakeholder is just what I think speaks to why even the 10-year is so special that we just were drinking on to me. And I feel like, once again, I'll keep going back to, because I think you have one of the coolest titles in the whiskey world.
Will likes history. I like it too, if you just tell me about it.
I like to drink it.
Yeah, well, I mean, fair, okay. Right? But I mean, I think that goes with the job, right? Like, if you don't know what it tastes like, how can you really speak to the essence of the brand? But to me, that's just really cool, and things that get me excited about the future of Jack Daniel's is the commitment to the past.
To me, you mentioned the commitment, and you're right. I mean, you've got to put up enough whiskey for 10, and then hold some for 12, and hold some of that for 14, and then hold some of that possibly for 18 and 21. So the amount of whiskey you're putting up that you're not going to get an immediate return on,
right?
That is a commitment from the company. It's a passion for Chris Fletcher, and the people of Lynchburg are behind it. And it really shows, it's the same grain bill as Old Number 7.
Right.
But what it does is just intensify the flavors that are there, and then allows Mother Nature even more time to do the work that Mother Nature does. So it's just an incredible expression of that grain bill that's always been there.
Well, and I think what also one of the other features, obviously, that makes Jack Daniel's stand apart, and to me, let's go on record. The three of us are not scientists, so let's get that out of the way. I know that they were concerned, thinking that that they were listening to 3 scientists, but even just hearing Chris talk about and his passion for chemistry. He's probably one of the few people in the world that can lock you in talking about esters and oils. I mean, because I was fascinated. I'm like, wait a second, take a step back. No one should care about this, but I do care. But even thinking about the charcoal mellowing process, something that is very unique to Jack Daniel's. When you think about an ultra age whiskey, we'll call it a 14, an 18, a 12 year, that, the mellowing that the barrel is doing for other competitors or other brands that may have older ones, they're still relying on the barrel to take care of a lot of those imperfections or tweaks to the actual product. But you're so much further ahead by balancing it, making it a softer, more palatable product from the get-go. Right. That's what excites me about something 18, 14, even, I mean, the 14-year-old in and of itself has so much body, so much character. And a lot of that goes back to what Jack Daniel's decided to do well over 100 years ago.
That's right. You're right. We owe Jack the process that we use, the recipe. We owe that to Jack and Nearest Green,
right,
his first master distiller. But, and we owe these age statements. Why did he settle on 12, 14, 10? 18 and 21. You know, it seems like there's a few years in between some of those.
Well, I mean, we're tasting them now, and he knew what he was doing. So, I wanted to go back to, you mentioned Lynchburg, and I have never seen or dealt with anybody at Jack Daniel's that just wasn't excited to be there. And if they do exist, y'all have them in the back room somewhere, maybe, you know, behind the yeast in a cooler or something. But talk to us a little bit about the culture of Lynchburg and how, like you said, that they've bought in. Some of these workers at Jack Daniel's have outlasted master distillers, you know, in and out or whatever. What's the culture behind Jack Daniel's, and how loyal is that town to the product?
Well, you know, Brown-Forman has other whiskeys.
Yes.
But down in Lynchburg, there is only one whiskey. And that's Jack Daniel's. And, you know, I have to confess, all of the other wonderful Brown-Forman brands are SOBs in Lynchburg. And by that, I mean some other brand.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I understood 100%.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's not coming from you. You're quoting
Right.
people. Yeah, absolutely.
Something you heard around, you know, the table at Miss Mary Bobo.
But that's their pride. That is the pride that they have. This is a whiskey-making town. Their second biggest employer is agriculture. And guess what? Agriculture is what creates whiskey.
Yeah.
The fact that they were growing corn, and it's a great corn-producing region, and it has this wonderful water, well, that's the basis of the great whiskey they have, Jack Daniel's. So they have pride there. And the reason they have pride, you know, a lot of people call it nepotism when you hire your son or daughter or grandson, aunt, uncle, niece, nephews. In Lynchburg, they call it quality control. And the reason it is you don't want to mess something up that the next generation may be out of job because the brand has been lost. You protect it. It's a family thing. And we have so many legacy employees. Our engagement scores outshine the industry. And, you know, I'd like it to say it's because Jack Daniel's is a wonderful employer, and they are, but it's because of the pride of the people.
Yeah.
The people, you know, they're not listed as an ingredient on the side of the bottle, but they should be. The fact that it does say Lynchburg on the bottle alludes to the fact that it's a whiskey-making town. And, buddy, you know, this is their whiskey.
Yeah. I actually asked Chris, I was like, I asked him, I was like, how does it feel to be essentially a legacy distiller because of his grandfather being there? But I was like, in my head, and I tell people this all the time, I was like, man, Chris Fletcher, if you think that it's like, oh, he got in because he's part of the family, it's like that's a plus, you know, that there is that history there. But there is no better master distiller out there that could have filled that spot.
Well, from
a chemistry side, all of these things, he's incredibly intelligent. He knows what good whiskey tastes like, and he's so committed to the Jack Daniel's brand. I mean, he was playing in the rickhouses when he was a kid, you know, and all this other stuff. And so it's just really cool to see that it wasn't because of his relationship. It was because he knows exactly what he's doing.
And he, you know, Chris was like any other high school graduate at Lynchburg, Tennessee, or small town USA.
Snuck in the rickhouse and had some whiskey at a young age. We talking about that?
He wanted to leave. He wanted to get out and see the world. Interesting enough, of course, as master distiller at Jack Daniel's, you do see the world.
Right.
Yeah.
But he left for a time. He worked for other distillers. He was at quality control at Brown-Forman. He learned a lot, but he always wanted to come back home once he got into the business and he knew the way his grandfather made it. And he'll say today, there is no distillery, and he knows because he's been to many. Right. Yep. There is no distillery.
And he actually came in during Jeff Arnett's term
as an assistant.
As his assistant.
And worked under Jeff.
Yep.
Well, I don't like to put people on the spot, but you are such a wealth of knowledge, and I've got to know, you've got so many fascinating stories we've heard. You've got to have a favorite Jack Daniel's story or piece of lore that just always comes to the forefront. Yeah. And And maybe while you think about it, because I am putting you on the spot, that's a little unfair, but Grease has a bottle he wants to ask you about that we can maybe talk about, and I'll let you think on that and we can revisit it. But
So I was able to acquire this in essentially an estate sale, but it was a direct buyer-seller situation. But, well, actually, I didn't buy it. It was given to me. But
family heirloom.
But this was a super unique bottle, and I kind of looked it up, and this is the only bottle that has this like wrapped glass thing on.
It's almost like a corkscrew, like a twister kind of look at the top.
Yeah,
it's a fluted neck that's twisted.
Yeah. And this is the Jack Daniel's Tennessee Bicentennial whiskey. It says 1796 to 1996, not 1776. To 1976. That's like the real Bicentennial.
Well, different Bicentennial. Depends on what you consider real.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. And this is at 96 proof. And so I actually asked Nelson, I was like, hey, I was actually going to ask you this on the show, but I wanted to make sure that you knew something about it. And I showed it this, and he just started going like crazy. I was like, hold, we got to talk about this on the show. I don't want to ruin it. So Nelson, what can you tell me about this bag?
Okay. This is the, Bicentennial bottle. It's for the state of Tennessee. They're on their bicentennial, 1996, and 1796 would be the centennial or the start of the state. But this bottle's very special to me because and I can't believe you had it. It's the first bottle that I wrote copy for. Yeah, I'm a copywriter by trade, and who's become a historian just. One of the things as a copywriter, it's like being a journalist, you research a lot. Mm-hmm. Well, this was the first one I wrote copy for. I wrote it for the packaging. And over the years, I always got a sample. They would send me a sample of my finished writing. Mm. So I've got...
How kind of them?
Yeah.
So I've got all kinds of bottles in my office, and people say, wow, look at that whiskey collection. I said, no, that's my back issues.
Oh, yeah.
My back issues.
It's my clippings. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
But I met John Grisham at one point, and I asked him, John, how many novels? And I informed him, and I think at the time, there were 8 novels that mentioned Jack Daniels in them, 8 of his novels. And I said, how many novels have you written, John? And he, 40, 50, I don't know. It was up there. And I was just impressed because it seems at some point, you're done. Mm-hmm. But he wasn't done because he said there's always a wrong that needs to be righted. So he'll have a theme. It could be student debt. It could be a number of things. It could be racial tension. But he wants to write it in his writings so that maybe people catch on. But we were talking about that, and he asked me, so how many have you written? I said, well, I'm read in 140 countries. And he was like...
bestseller in 140 countries.
Or 170. 170. What? And he looked at me, and I said, well, I'm not sure anybody's reading the label copy, but at the time, I'd written some copy that was on the old number 7 label when I said that. And like I said, I'm not sure everybody's reading it, but it's there.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah.
Great.
So great.
And to that point, the fact that a brand from Lynchburg, Tennessee, especially if you visited there, it is small town America. It is about as red, white, and blue as you can get.
Oh, the downtown just screams like 1950s.
Yeah, just Mayberry.
Yeah.
It's Americana at its core, and the fact that Jack Daniels, I saw some marketing copy at some point in one of like a trade magazine kind of thing that was saying, top 5 most valuable global brands or most recognizable trademarks, and it's Coca-Cola, Jack Daniels, Nike, Apple at the time, and that Jack Daniels, an American Tennessee whiskey, is one of the most recognizable trademarks in the world. And also the fact that it couples with another one of the most recognizable trademarks in the world so frequently, Coca-Cola, is just such a remarkable thing that has come out of the United States, the American South. And both of those companies, started in Georgia and Tennessee. That just, it speaks, I think, to the hard work and the culture of really taking pride of what we do. And it's awesome. And your copy's on those labels.
Speaking of Coca-Cola.
That was what you call a setup, by the way. That was softball.
I know.
And I like that you picked up on it.
I liked it. One of our supporters, great supporter over the years, he sent me an email, and he was like, I love Nelson. He got to hang out with you for an extended period of time at some function or something like that. And he was like, I would love to know how Jack and Coke became a thing.
Oh, wow.
And I'm opening the 12.
Yeah, let's go to 12. What'd you think of the 10? And I'll answer that
The
question.
10 is
I love the 10.
perfect. Yeah. It's perfect. I mean, like the low proof, like that's what I love is that I feel like the proof point is exactly where it needs to be for each individual one.
This is 97.
Yeah.
And a very, very nice whiskey.
It's crushable.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I am in some ways glad that the 10-year-old is, it's obviously they're making as much as they can and putting out as much as they can. And they've even increased the capacity that they put out recently. But if that were able to be an everyday drinker, it would be for me. I would go through so much Jack Daniel's 10 because it's right in the pocket. You can drink it in the summer outside if you need to, just relaxing on the back porch, even though it gets so hot here. It's not too high proof that it's going to overwhelm you, but it's...
Yeah, you could drink that while you're sweating.
I mean, I will.
And it'll make you sweat a little more.
Yeah, but it's okay.
It's okay.
So back to your question, which was...
The Jack and Coke relationship.
Yeah, how'd that get started? Well, we know because of a government kind of survey or report that on military bases in the American South, they were mixing Jack and Coke in the early 1900s. I mean, like 1908, 1904. We know that they were mixing whiskey and Coca-Cola. And so... the flavors just go together. They complement themselves perfectly.
I mean, it reminds me of game day, like college football.
Well, and I love that it happened to be military bases in the American South. The fact that it is, once
that's
again,
as America as you can get.
Right. The fact that a third thing that is, people don't go and ask for a whiskey and cola at a bar. It's a cocktail that is simple, that is a call cocktail.
That's
Give me a
right.
Jack and Coke. And if you even think about it from like a mixologist standpoint, it's almost like the Coca-Cola. It has bitters, it has simple syrup, and you have a spirit. Right. It is essentially a perfect mixed cocktail right there with just two ingredients because you have a pre-made mixer.
No, you're right.
I mean, unless it's Dr. Pepper, then you got like 25.
Well, yeah, and you're totally right on that. I mean, they complement perfectly. Sometimes people will tell cooks, if you run out of vanilla because of the flavor of Jack Daniels, just use some Jack Daniels. Right. Of course, the cooks reply, I'm more likely to run out of Jack Daniels than vanilla. But you've heard of a vanilla Coke.
Right.
Well, it's that combination of the two flavors that I was talking to somebody at Coca-Cola. We were having this ongoing debate about whose bottle shape is more iconic. Now, they've got the drop on us in that they copyrighted their bottle shape. But whose bottle shape is more iconic? Is it that square Jack Daniels bottle that really, because it wasn't copyrighted, all of a sudden there were a flurry of imitators after Jack came along? Or is it that, contoured bottle of Coca-Cola? There's no way to truly answer that.
Right.
But I even think the shape and the color of the label really helped us in the whole rock and roll feel that it's just, there's something about it. It's a very powerful shape, and we all know the color, the corporate color of rock and rollers is black.
Right.
So.
Well, in the hilarity and irony to me is that it has the outlaw country. It's got the rock and roll. You see rock stars with a bottle of Jack Daniels. Yeah, the square edges, very harsher lines for the edgy rock, and then obviously a black label. But Jack Daniels, because of the process, is the least harsh of its competitors in the field. And it's it's almost like, oh, if you want to be really rock and roll, get some rock gut, But you're drinking something that was made to to actually be enjoyed, to sip on, to have the flavor come through.
You know, you've hit on something. For years, people said, well, why don't you feature these rock and rollers? Why don't you feature the movies with Jack Daniels? Why don't you? And we're going, because they already do that. Right. And they tell one story. And so as the makers of Jack Daniels, we've got to turn around, and you'll see in our newest campaign, it's focused on Lynchburg and how the whiskey is made. So people don't forget that this is a high quality product.
Right. And I think that is one, in the world of earned media, Jack Daniels has had a golden ticket because of people like Frank Sinatra, rock and roll, being in films, the iconic bottle. You don't need to form those relationships. They're doing it on their own. But it also allows you to still tell your own story, the history in those things. They can tell why they like it, why it's the icon of being on stage and, you know, smashing a guitar. But you don't have to do that. You don't have to pretend to be rock and roll. It is rock and roll. You can just be Lynchburg. You can just be the history and making something quality, that is something you're proud of.
Well, and back to you and Jack and Coke, just a couple of other little
Jack I was actually going to circle
Coke
back.
Things that are kind of fun. You know, for years when I came onto the brand, it was 5 million cases. It's over 22 million cases today. That's how much I've had to consume it.
Right,
But anyhow,
but it's because of all the copy you've written. Naturally, just keep collecting.
But back in the day, of course, we said this is a quality product. You don't mix it.
Yeah.
You know, you drink it either neat on the rocks or with a splash of water. Well, we were saying that, but most of America, the number one way it was being consumed is with Coca-Cola. Mm-hmm. And eventually we caught on to that fact when we found out even Jack Daniels himself mixed his whiskey in a tansy julep. Instead of mint, he used a local medicinal herb called tansy. So Jack was mixing his whiskey too. And so we've decided, you know, the very best way to enjoy Jack Daniels is the way you like it.
Yeah.
And for many people, Jack and Coke was the way it was enjoyed by, you know, Lemmy. Mm-hmm. Lemmy of Motorhead.
Right.
When he passed away, the fans of Motorhead said, they wrote Jack Daniels, they wrote the distillery and said, you know, we'd like you to rename Jack and Coke the Lemmy. And we had to answer them and say, you know, we never came up with the name Jack and Coke.
We don't own that.
Right.
We don't own it.
Yeah.
The American people own that. And among your crowd, call it whatever you want to call it. If it's the Lemmy to you, call it. But, you know, we can't really change the name of something that the American people have, or people around the world really have bestowed on this.
So it was organic.
Oh, yeah.
It was completely organic.
And we were late to the party, like I said. You know, we
You're like, no, why are they mixing it? It's so perfect. Why would they do that? Yeah.
But today it's gone so far that one of the wonderful things is you can now get Jack Daniels and Coke pre-mixed.
Right. That's where I was headed. Is that the first official relationship that we saw? Like, it wasn't that long ago. What, 2 or 3 years ago, something like that? Those came out.
Those two parties, Jack and Coke, have been talking for a long, long time.
Yeah,
and it's like any other merger. When you have two really successful things, you really want to leave it alone. Right. Plus, the American people, or like I said, people around the world, were already doing it. What do we really gain by putting them together? Well, you gain what, you know, you can mix it a way that you think is right.
Yeah.
But it's funny. Everybody has their own proportions for Jack and Coke.
Yeah, we call that a game day mix with me and Will. It is, if this is the glass, it is.
Well, it's a solo cup.
Jack Daniels to here with ice and then the Coke.
You do a little splash just to, discolor it a little.
Soften it.
Yeah.
You know.
A Coke floater.
A Coke floater.
So you're the Jack first.
Right, always.
Well,
on game days.
Well, I would call it Jack forward.
Jack forward.
We are talking about a cocktail here.
Right.
And we like that. We like Jack forward. But everybody's got their own
100%. Yeah, and it's unique too, because in the whiskey connoisseur realm, like, you know, we want cask strength, you know, we want all of high age and all this other stuff. Majority of the market is looking for that smooth factor, right? And so like they're mixing it, you know, they're adding water, or they're going for, you know, an 80 proof, you know, Old Number 7. And I often forget that because I'm so in this niche world that I'm like, oh yeah, how are they selling that? Like, you know, but it's they sell it really well.
Oh yeah. And it's been a great relationship, a long time in the making, and it's great. Our matchmaker has been the public, you know. It's been the public. It's not really the companies come together because that's what people want.
Right.
Well, and even to that point, it sells well and has for a long time. The dreaded thing in whiskey world is our allocated bottles, right? You know, you're chasing the bottles every year, and there's only so many to go around. You're standing in the lines, but Jack Daniel's we may have to thank Jack Daniel's for that to some degree in the whiskey world, because for the longest time, thank you to some other musicians, Jack Daniel's was an allocated product, just Old Number 7.
Yeah, from the about the mid 50s, just about the time Brown-Forman took over, probably by and large because of a person named Frank Sinatra talking about it from the stage, saying this is the nectar of the gods, the best booze in the world made in Lynchburg, Tennessee. And he was not on any kind of contract. He just really loved it. He learned about Jack Daniel's from his mentor in culture, and that was Humphrey Bogart. And so from 56 to about 79, it was in allocation. And what it did for the brand is, if you are a distributor or a retailer who received a case of Jack Daniel's, you'd probably make before you put it on the shelves, you'd make a few phone calls. Maybe somebody at the bank, the president of the bank, maybe the mayor, the people you wanted to impress, a doctor, whatever.
That's what I've got in.
You'd make those calls in those early days of retailing. And so that just made and at the time, you know, most people would cut back on their advertising. Jack Daniel's continued to advertise, but their headline on their ads, they still focused on Lynchburg, and they didn't have to spend the money. They could sell every drop they made. Their headline was, "We'd rather ask for your patience than your forgiveness." And by that they meant, you're just going to have to wait, because we're not going to change the way we make it and mess it up.
Right. Yeah.
So they just wanted to remind people the reason they couldn't get it is because it was still being made the Jack Daniel's way.
Do you know the economic impact-ish, whatever, you might not know this, but that Sinatra brought to the table?
Oh, I mean,
did it become a worldwide known brand at that time?
You know, no, because he made it in such short supply.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
He was the reason we didn't go global earlier.
You can blame him for that.
We didn't really go global in a serious way until after 79, when we caught up. About 1980, we really started. And things like 14 and 10 and 12, we couldn't even think of those things back then, because every drop we were making was accounted for.
Absolutely.
So,
you'll have
but his impact, I mean, that's the reason the first name on a bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey, other than a Motlow or Daniel's, was Frank Sinatra. That was the first.
Yeah. And that was not that long ago.
Not that long ago.
Yeah.
And again, that was something that we got with the Sinatra estate and the family.
And it's a very unique process for the Sinatra bottle. It basically has y'all add grooves in it.
Barrels.
Yeah, so that there's more surface area for the whiskey to hit.
And 100 proof as well, I believe, isn't it?
Pretty unique. I think so. Maybe 90?
Yeah, I think it's 90.
Maybe 90.
It was 90 proof because that was the proof when Frank was enjoying it.
That makes sense. That checks.
Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know a few facts, not as many as you.
Well, I have opinions that I think are facts.
Well, you know, also, I said what the problem with the 10-year was, is that I would drink it every day. The problem with the 12-year
is that you drink it every day.
Well, yes, true. But the vanilla comes out so much with 12 that all I want to try is a 12-year Jack and Coke.
Wow.
But not worth it.
Wow.
Not worth trying the 12-year with a Coca-Cola because it's so delicious on its own that you don't want to do that. But the vanilla coming through, you think about a vanilla Coke, it's my go-to at Waffle House if it's not in the morning and I'm getting a coffee. If it's a Waffle House afternoon or dinner, I'm getting a vanilla Coke because those flavors go so well together. The enhanced vanilla that you get because of the extra time in the barrel and the higher proof. This is 107, I want to say.
It's 107.
107, which I think is the perfect proof, by the way.
I do love 107 proof. 114.
I think that would just make a lights out Jack and Coke. So I'm going to have to go. Here's what I'm going to have to do. Go to a bar that has it. So I'm not using anything that I have and spend an arm and a leg on getting them to make me the Jack and Coke with the 12. Wow. Like it's like a $40 Jack and Coke, but worth it maybe.
Nelson, I do have a question. Sure. We stayed at the Hermitage Hotel downtown Nashville. Do you honestly believe that there is a bottle of Jack Daniels in the walls of Hermitage Hotel?
If it's in the wall, it's probably empty. I don't believe anybody at that time would have had the restraint to put a full bottle
to leave it in there.
And in fact, there's a little house. It's a kind of a gingerbread, very ornate house just across the street from the distillery as you're going into Lynchburg, and it has a garage. And the wife in Lem Motlow, Jack's nephew, who took over the distillery after Jack died, Lem Motlow had a friend at this house, but the wife was a teetotaler. Lem's wife was a teetotaler, as a matter of fact. And so Lem was never invited in the house, so they sat in the garage and talked. The two gentlemen did. And when they were renovating that garage and took a few boards off the wall of that garage, you know what they found slipped in beside? It was kind of insulating that garage. Were empty bottles of Jack Daniels that those two gentlemen.
That's where they'd hang out. That's where they had to.
Yeah.
The Hermitage might not be the only wall that contains a bottle of Jack.
You know,
I feel like in the state of Tennessee, in the greater Nashville area down to Lynchburg, there are probably many a building that may have empty Jack Daniels bottles in them.
Yeah. Yeah. So Motlow was mainly the guy that dealt with like legislation stuff and essentially lobbying in downtown Nashville. You said he was there a lot more than Jack Daniel.
Well, Lem, we have a great deal to owe a debt we owed Lem. He got us through Prohibition. And Prohibition in Tennessee, we haven't been ahead of our time in a lot of things in Tennessee. We were ahead of our time with the making of charcoal mellowing as a process for making whiskey. We were also ahead of our time in Prohibition. We went dry in our state 10 years before the nation figured out it was a good idea. We were ahead of the time. And the Hermitage plays a part in that.
Yeah.
But anyhow, be that as it may, we were ahead of our time in 1909, and then the state doesn't get wet again until 1938, which is 5 years after Prohibition's repealed. So we had Prohibition longer than the rest of the country. And Lem was the reason that it was changed even in 38, because he sponsored and pushed forward legislation that allowed for the state to go dry. Now, it didn't go wet immediately. Like, there's still some wet counties and there's still some dry counties in places like Georgia and Arkansas, Texas and Tennessee. It had to be voted on county by county, municipality by
it wasn't an executive order.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but we owe that to Lem, that we got to enjoy Jack Daniels again in the state of Tennessee and that it was made there.
Yeah. So what was his big thing as far as like during Prohibition? Did they shift to medicinal stuff? And no, they didn't. If you find a bottle of Jack Daniels that says medicinal whiskey on it, it was probably barrels that he had sold off and somebody else had bottled. That on there, because there was only a handful of people with a license to distill for medicinal purposes, right?
And the Jack Daniels distillery did not have that.
I didn't know if that's what kept them afloat during that time.
Well,
so what was their revenue source?
So like 1909, it goes dry in Tennessee. but he'll move that. He's got a brother, Frank Motlow, everyone called Spoon. Spoon Motlow's down in Alabama. He'll make whiskey there. And by the way, he'll even make a rye there, and that's our history in rye. He'll make whiskey there. He'll also...
Is the rye today the same mash bill as that?
No.
No?
Yeah.
Okay.
But from the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair, in which Jack Daniels will win a gold medal, over the years, Lem Motlow had developed banking relationships in St. Louis, business relationships, so he'll start a distillery there. But, a decade later, in 1919, it's all shut down.
Right.
And he's not making whiskey. And the way he makes his money is he raises Tennessee walking horses. He's got a champion that he'll raise. He raises mules, and he'll have a hardware store on the square. It's still there. Of course, we sell very software in terms of T-shirts. We're not
hats,
selling,
no
mule
hammers.
collars or hammers or anything. But he'll have that operation too. He'll be farming. He does all of these things. The interesting thing about it, though, he does all of that business under the name Jack Daniels, Lem Motlow proprietor. And we're glad he did, because after Prohibition, a company in New York will introduce Jack Daniels whiskey because they don't think it's coming back. Lem will fight to keep his trademark, and he does so successfully in part because he's kept the name alive by using it as a business name.
Smart. Do you think that was his intention, or was that just a nice little surprise?
I'd like to think it was intention, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Wow. That's great. The trademark world there.
Yeah.
You can lose. We laugh all the time because Will's just like, trademarks don't mean anything until they do. Like, the process is convoluted. Like, there's a lot of ins and outs of a part of that or whatever. But yeah, like, you have to use it. Like, if you don't use it, you will lose it.
And Jack Daniels was in danger of that. And Lem Motlow, a great businessman. He was a great businessman. He knew a thing or two about whiskey, but he left the whiskey making to his other brother, Jess Motlow, who is the master distiller coming out of Prohibition.
Okay. Wow.
I love that. Should we have a little 14? Oh, you're still lagging my mind.
You guys can get started. What did you think of the 12, though?
I told you. I mean, the vanilla comes through. I love the proof. The 12, this is obviously the third batch, and I've been fortunate to try the first and the second and the third. And if people were to ask me what's your favorite whiskey, I can never answer it, but that would be in my top 5. Yeah, I just love the 12. I love it.
Really good.
I think when we did that tasting with Fletcher for that media event, and we got to try all these, the 12 was like, I mean, we were like, oh, boy.
It's a hit. It's a hit.
The problem with asking, like, even comparing the 10, the 12, and the 14 isn't a fair question.
It's not.
Because you're so fortunate to be able to drink the 3 of them even side by side, that they're all so wonderful. It's not fair to pick a favorite. It's like picking your favorite kid.
They're 3 different.
Exactly.
Same grain bill, but a different amount of time and
different proof.
We owe a great deal of debt to Mother Nature as well, And Lynchburg,
she's doing good.
That climate,
we're really proud of her.
We keep waiting for her to draw a salary. It's not happening yet.
No, she's taking a tax.
Oh, you're right.
Angel share is getting pulled all the time.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
I did. That was something interesting. It was something when we were talking earlier about the history and the heritage, the Jack Daniels rye, the bottled and bond, which is probably one of the best kept secrets in whiskey right now because it's aged much longer than you would expect, especially for, $29, $35 price point. It's fantastic. But I had always kind of assumed that the rye was almost a little bit of a departure from, because almost everything Jack Daniels has done was the same grain bill, the same, charcoal filtration, and that when they introduced the rye, it was like, that is a little bit of a deviation. But you brought up even that there's history. Can point to history of rye that was from Jack Daniels. And so That had me curious. Is there anything else that you could elaborate on that?
Well, first of all, we have a lot of experience with rye because it's the spice grain in Old Number 7, 12% rye.
Right.
And 8% malted barley. So
it's not like y'all stared at the truck and be like, what do we do with this?
Yeah. But yes, there was a history from Spoon and Lem Motlow of making rye. And the reason the grain bill is not the same as it was back in the day is, the innovation, the fact that he was producing a rye, but they wanted that perfect combination of how much rye. There's people who are barely rye at 51%.
Right.
And then there are people who, I'm not sure what they're doing unless...
There's like Canadian rye that uses a fermentation starter. Yeah. That's like an added, not chemical, but a biological component to get fermentation going.
You have to do something.
Because you need something to
You either have to malt the rye somehow, or you need to add something, be it a chemical or a biological agent, to convert those starches into a small enough thing that the yeast can work. But anyhow, so they were really looking at, and I think they hit it. I really think they hit the right amount of rye in that. And then when they went with the bottled and bond, I think the bottled and bond rye is at the perfect proof. The fact of the matter is, any Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey, if it's at 100 proof, could be bottled and bond.
Right, because we
make
everything.
It all there.
Bonded warehouses. Yeah.
Right. We make it there.
Y'all actually had a bonded office that I think the federal government occupied on campus, like right there where
That's
you guys
how you get a bonded warehouse grease.
I just don't know about the ins and outs, okay?
That's back in the day.
The only bond I know about is the bail bond.
Well, that's back in the day. We didn't even have the keys to the barrel house. The government did. That's before. Nowadays, they just see we're so exact in our measurements and everything and our output. But the federal government back in the day would watch it and have another person on property. And it was the reason Jack himself limited his production. He limited it to 99 bushels of corn a day, because if he went any higher, he said, I'm making enough. If I go any higher, I've got to get another government man on my property.
Wow.
So
try to limit that.
He was opposed to that. But today,
so he doesn't necessarily want more government jobs.
And we're talking about Jack back in the day. I'm not going to get political.
Couldn't get there.
And Jack, what's funny about it, back in Jack's day, politics was like the national pastime. Baseball after the Civil War would come along, but there really wasn't a national pastime. It was politics. And so it didn't matter who was being inaugurated. Republican, Democrat, didn't matter. Jack had a party every year for the inauguration.
Yeah.
And I wish we were, that unified today, that we could all just have.
Well, there's parties. It just involves crying or cheering.
Well, I was about to say now,
but together.
Now you don't want to introduce Jack Daniels to a inauguration party. That just goes south real fast.
Right. Nothing good.
It was a different time.
Yeah.
A different time for sure.
Yeah.
So this is a higher proof for sure. It's 126.3.
Yep.
Which means it's real. I'm glad we're doing 10, 12, 14.
Going up in proof.
Well, we're going up in proof, but I'm glad we're offering new batches of it every year.
Right.
Oh, right.
Because it means as the amount of our age-stated whiskey from year to year is going up because we're adding to it. So more people are going to have an opportunity. And that's the worst part of all this. Jack Daniel's wants to be accessible. It's the whiskey of the people, And
even on the international stage. I think this year's 10-year-old batch,
yep.
I think you guys were able to double the production, but almost half of that ended up going overseas.
And because we sell more than half of Jack Daniel's overseas now. Right. So, but that's the hardest part in this, is getting it out there for people to sample and try and enjoy. Because it's not about sales. It's about letting people in on something that's pretty special, I think.
Yeah.
Well, and to that point as well, the before it was released, before they were shipping it out, Jack Daniels came to us and said, let's throw a party effectively for people that love whiskey and love Jack Daniels, because we want, before it's hitting stores, before anyone is able to get it, instead of it just being a reviewer or a media, let's let people that just love it and want to have a chance to try it. And that's exactly what we did. And we've got the video up about it, and it was one of the best nights we've had in a long time.
Yeah, I'll throw our Jack Daniels videos with Chris Fletcher in the description if you guys want.
But I mean, it's even the fact that Chris Fletcher showed up. This wasn't a bunch of Food and Wine and New York Times journalists sitting in the room hearing him talk about the process and the history. It was him pouring his heart out about the passion he has for Jack Daniels to people that want to drink it.
And he's an expert whiskey taster. I mean, we've enjoyed it today the way a lot of people enjoy it. But with the higher proof and the greater age of this product, there's so much more you can talk about. Chris can really dissect because he's been trained as a taster. That's part of the quality control that he does. And he can bring out, there's more nutty notes in some of this. Yeah. People will talk about tobacco. People will talk about, even there's some more floral notes. It's just, when you get a whiskey this intense in flavor, there's so much you can talk about.
Right.
Well,
he does a great job
with that
of
age and that proof, you start getting a unique mouthfeel that's very viscous. Like it's like a little oily, sticky. It sticks with you a long time. And that just complements, the finish just being incredible.
Back to where we started, though, also with that, the fact that it's already has some of that maturing, not aging process, but refining, whatever you want to call it, going through that charcoal mellowing.
You said charcoal?
Charcoal mellowing. The ability in what you get out of a 14-year product, if you were to compare that to a 14-year product from another brand, blind, I think you were to say, which is the oldest, you would pick this because of it's already got a jump start on getting rid of, not the flavor. That's not what the charcoal mellowing does. I said it again, charcoal mellowing.
It's fine.
Charcoal mellowing doesn't add flavor, but it helps to get it softer, get some of those impurities done away with earlier. That the inside of a charred barrel is charcoal. Right. It's already interacting with a charcoal. Right. And that's part of the aging process, is to refine it to make it a better thing, as well as add the flavor. But that, I feel like, because of the process that Jack Daniels has done since the beginning, it has such a leg up on becoming such a beautiful whiskey, just because it's already gone through something that's getting rid of some of those esters, some of those impurities, things that would be a negative experience when you're tasting it.
Well, you really hit on something it's part of history for Jack Daniels as well. And that's, people go, well, you had these age statements. Why did they ever disappear? Well, you had Prohibition come along, and so so you had to start up again. But the Motlows, not Brown-Forman trying to make more whiskey, but the Motlows removed the age statement even off of old number 7. And the reason they did it was because people didn't understand. They were comparing Jack Daniels, and people would say, well, I'm drinking a 20-year-old Scotch. Well, if you had thought about it and looked at it, Jack Daniels was darker than a 20-year-old Scotch. Right. It's because you're talking about two different ways the barrel interacts with the whiskey. With Jack Daniels, we draw, all of our color and a good deal, more than half of our flavor from the barrel. Well, with a Scotch, you've got some of that peated flavor and some of that grassy malt. You're using the barrel as much to soften the flavor, not draw it out of the barrel.
Right,
and that's why they're using used barrels
and
as
they're
well,
used
because
barrels.
they're wanting less flavor introduced in a way. Yeah.
So they took the age statement off because they're saying they're comparing it with older Scotches and saying, well, an older Scotch is better, when in truth, this was a darker, richer flavor at a lower age. And the other thing that they said that you've hit on, the Motlow said, and charcoal mellowing adds years to the aging process. We've got a head start before we go in the barrel by going through that 10 feet of charcoal. And you pointed that out, and that goes back to the Motlows. They thought they would agree with you.
Well, I mean, good company.
That seems smart. Like you take away the age statement, and now you're not boxed into a certain age.
Well, people
I
could
get that.
compare
Right.
based on color and taste versus looking at a number. But let's talk about today. When we have people that are more understanding, we have products today that, we haven't had since Jack's day. It used to be the only people that would taste anything barrel proof were the people sampling the whiskey back at the distillery and tasting it. Jack Daniels would taste his whiskey at barrel proof. Well, we have that today. It's because we have a more discerning kind of drinker.
Right.
And they are looking for the differences that age makes. They're looking for the difference that barrel proof makes. And so we're able to introduce
The
this, and
grooves in
people
the
understand
barrels.
it.
What does that do? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So we're ready for it, is I guess what I'm saying.
It just took the people a while to catch up. Jack Daniels has already been there.
Well,
Really quick, I think for our viewers and listeners, you think of when Jack Daniels charcoal mellows that they're just dumping like a lot of new make down this vat of whatever. No, it's intricate pipes that
with a hole.
with a miniature hole that does drip, 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 drip. And how long does it take for that drip to make it to the end of that process?
It's several days. It's really hard to mark a drop and see when it comes out the other side.
We're going to tag that.
But it's several days for it to get through there. And we're not forcing it through. It's not like it's,
it's
some
just
kind
gravity,
of pipe that you're forcing the whiskey through. We're not flooding the charcoal.
Right.
We're just drop by drop, charcoal mellowed. And they added that. In the early days, the advertising was always charcoal mellowed. And they specified drop by drop. And the reason they did that is back in his day, there were 15 distillers in town who were all making it the same way.
Yeah.
But Jack, even in 1896, a Nashville reporter came down to Lynchburg and he said, Jack's whiskey is better. And he gave one reason for it. And we could give others like the Cave Spring and other things. But he pointed out Jack changes his charcoal out.
Oh, yeah. And
pointed that
it's
out.
just like a few months, right? Like,
it's longer than a few months. And we have tasters to determine when the charcoal is ready to
it's
be
too
replaced.
mellow. When it's too mellow.
Well, actually, when it quits doing its job.
Right,
It's like a sponge.
right.
When it can no longer absorb.
It's like when you got to change your Brita filter grease.
We have a history with Brita filters and
yeah.
whiskey.
Eventually, it's not doing the filtering. It's not doing what you need.
And some people in Lynchburg weren't. So even in Jack's day, he was known for doing it the right way. And we hope, because people in Lynchburg have followed in his footsteps and won't let anybody mess with their whiskey.
And for those out there also, too, that don't know, the regular charcoal mellowing process goes through about 10 feet of
10
charcoal.
feet of charcoal.
And then the gentleman's jack gets introduced to an additional 6 feet.
No. It's just a matter. The thing about.
Or does it go through the whole thing twice?
No, it doesn't. If it went through the whole 10 feet, it would lose a lot of its flavor and all of its color. So it's just a little bit of charcoal. If it's just a matter of a few feet, not 10 feet.
Okay.
And it's a slightly different process because all we really want to do, when that second pass through the charcoal, we've already got a really mellow whiskey.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing that I've noticed most, it will take out some of the oaky notes and allow some of that sweetness to shine through and soften it just a bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Which is not bad. Yeah, that's not a bad thing.
That double charcoal mellowing is a thought that went back all the way to Jack. But we were only able to do it when we did it in the 80s because we could, we had the innovation to be able to have the equipment to not totally strip it of all of its color.
And the rye goes through that process too, but just a lot less charcoal,
yes.
correct?
It's also, because when you're drinking a rye, you want the spiciness.
Yes.
That's part of what you're looking for.
Yeah, I love rye. It doesn't necessarily have to be, a rye, but like a high rye mash bill and a bourbon.
Flavor that it introduces.
And everybody's palate's different, but I love it.
Well, Nelson, you've given, I mean, we could keep you here for literal hours because it's just fascinating. And every turn we take, there's some other nugget that gets introduced. Did you think of one of your most
you're coming back to
fascinating? Well, I told you I would. I gave you plenty of time, but we kept yapping.
Or you can tell our listeners something that they probably don't know.
Oh, well, I mean, there's so many things that fascinate me about this man. You know, he leaves home at an early age. In his teens, you know, what is a teenager doing today? They're, you know, scrolling through their phone. Jack Daniels was engaged in the career of his lifetime.
Yeah, he had been smoking cigarettes for at least 5 years by then. My Jack Daniel did, at least, in my head.
He was an unbelievable person. He was not just a great whiskey maker and a person that, you know, hired Nearest Green to be his first master distiller, which was counter the culture in the South.
Yes. Well, Ernest actually raised him a little bit too,
Nearest.
right?
Yeah. Yes.
Ernest.
Nearest.
Not Ernest Goes to Camp.
Yeah.
Nearest.
One of my top 5 movies.
I mean, it's hard for us to know exactly what people thought in that day and what the relationship was. But we know that there has been a member of that family as part of the distillery and that Jack paid based on merit. We've looked back through the pay records and Jack paid based on merit, how long you'd been there, and not by the color of your skin. You know, we have records of that. So there was something different about Jack, and it's probably because he left home at such an early age and that he gravitated to a still, and the person he looked up to was an enslaved man named Nearest Green. And when Jack starts his distillery, it's 1866, emancipation has occurred. He hires Nearest as his first master distiller. Of course, he didn't call him a master distiller.
Right.
That's a term since 1990.
Right.
He would have been the head distiller for Jack Daniels. But Jack was good at that. He was a great businessman. He comes up with a square bottle. He comes up with the number 7. I mean, so he's entertains at parties.
Is there there has to be. What's the significance of number 7?
There is. That's one of those stories that, you know, we don't know the answer to, but people, you know, it was named after his 7th girlfriend was his favorite. Well, if that's true, now we know why he never got married.
If I were to make a whiskey, I'd be like, I married my 17th. Old number 17.
Well, now we know why he never got married. If you're naming your product after a woman and you call her old number 7,
yeah, not going to fly.
You're probably not too slick with the ladies. Yeah. You may have smooth whiskey, but your social skills with the fairer sex, not
I don't know,
smooth.
man. Jack Daniels seems smooth, bro.
Yeah.
I bet he.
Yeah. So my favorite story, though, and there are 100 of them that really fascinate me. It's my favorite story. It probably doesn't mean anything to anybody else, but it's a story about his house. People want to see Jack's house. And the answer to the story, what happened to Jack's house, is the answer to most buildings at that time period. It burned down, you know, because they were heating and lighting with open flames. Right. And so it burned down. But it had this mantle that we have a description. He had an upstairs ballroom with a Steinway piano. And one of the girls who would come to his house with one of her parents as her chaperone, she would play the piano. Jack had these dances. She describes this mantle in his house. It's ornate. You could step into it. It had life-size angels, cherubs, on either side of the mantle. It was carved in Italian marble and had been shipped from Italy. And in her letter, she tells the story that when it came from Italy on this boat, and it got to the Gulf of Mexico, that pirates waylaid the ship, and they scuttled it and took everything off the ship. And then they got to this crate that said Jack Daniels, Lynchburg, Tennessee, and they stopped. And they sent the ship on with that one crate. I love that story because, you know, we for years mistakenly said that pirates like rum.
Yeah.
But maybe they like Jack Daniels even more. because they sent that
They
crate
saved
out.
it.
It's a great story.
I've been
That's
saying
what I was looking for.
I've been saying this for
That's
years.
what I've been looking for.
I've been saying this for years. Pirates are real. They're real. They're not fake.
Well, we know this.
Well,
Yeah,
we didn't. I've never seen them. Some people like they didn't exist, like dinosaurs.
All right. Nelson, thank you so much for joining us today. I mean, this has just been a blast. Like I said, we could talk for hours. We'll have to have you back again. But thanks for sharing great whiskey, great stories, great history. And Grease, as we always say, to close out our show, we don't know Jack,
But we'll drink it. What do you think about that, Nelson?
Oh, that's awesome.
Do you like that one?
Yeah, I like
Yep.
that.
All right.
I might have to use it.